Among the many Americans who visited the court of Miss Stein was Mr. Ernest Hemingway. On one occasion he held a very significant conversation with her. It was about homosexuality. Miss Stein defended its practice among women, as well she might, and explained that female homosexuality was less perverse and cleaner than homosexuality among men. She evidently thought that all physical relations between males were sodomitic. Mr. Hemingway did not argue this point, but condemned all sexual deviation. His views on the subject were so strong that he said a man must be prepared to kill rather than submit. Usually, when an overture of this nature is made to a grown man, his slightest frown is sufficient to cause the other party to go and join the Foreign Legion. It is therefore difficult to imagine where, outside the novels of Mr. David Story, the rape of one man by another is a likelihood. Mr. Hemingway's remark sounds less like an expression of considered moral condemnation than an almost involuntary cry uttered in some obsessive lurid dream. This perpetual nightmare was what provoked and maintained the author's lifestyle. Though not exactly autobiographical, his novels were adventure stories whose heroes were nearly always excessively masculine men of action, and as Mr. Hemingway grew older, so did they. Unlike Mr. Kipling and Mr. Galsworthy, two other writers who liked the idea of a man's world, he did not seem to think of women as a nuisance or as a means of acquiring property. He described his heroines with affection, but not with great understanding. To have identified himself with them even for the purpose of literature might have brought back the terrible dream of androgyny. He may even have feared that there was something effete about the occupation of writing fiction of any kind. To atone for this, he displayed in his life a degree of courage that came near to making it a parody of his books. He fought in all the available wars, fell out of airplanes, and shot everything that moved throughout the length and breadth of Africa. In the end, he even shot himself. People always refer to this last act as the final tragedy. I cannot imagine why. In a way, all death, and, because of it, all life, is tragic. About life, the hero of A Farewell to Arms says, "It kills the very good, and the very gentle, and the very brave impartially." If you are none of these, you can be sure it will kill you in the end, but there will be no special hurry. Surely it is only in this general sense that Mr. Hemingway's death is tragic. A man may keep on writing far into the night of senility. Many authors do. But if he is a man of action, he cannot, in the fullest sense, continue to live those last years. To me, Mr. Hemingway's suicide represents a triumph of style over life. It shows that he regarded his existence as a work of art requiring a definite outline. His action puts Mr. Wilde, for all his protestations, to shame. Unlike Miss Stein, Mr. Hemingway did not have to perform the feat of balancing his prodigious personality on a slender literary gift. He wrote a great deal, and right from the beginning his work was almost universally admired. His problem was, therefore, the opposite of hers, how to stomp about in the flow of his fiction without drowning. He succeeded. Except for a sense of humor, Mr. Hemingway had everything. He was as handsome as the sun, his constitution seemed almost indestructible, he had talent, he had fame, and after movies had been made of A Farewell to Arms, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, The Killers, and The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, he was rich. What is more, he made the fullest use of every one of these attributes. Of all the writers whom I can call to mind, he is the one whose lifestyle was not only in keeping with what he wrote, but transcended it. In a sense, he could be termed one of the martyrs of style. The price he paid for living as he did must have been enormous. No one is by nature as masculine as all that. But then, we should not expect a lifestyle to be free. All we may ask is that it shall be worth what it costs. If Mr. Hemingway suffered for the sake of style, it was his secret. The style itself was the opposite of martyrdom. It was not he, but his heroes, who always died for their ideals. Their author triumphed over all enemies and all obstacles. However, martyrdom can be a style. It is for Mr. Norman Mailer. He is just as rugged as Mr. Hemingway, but more modern. Because morality has changed, he has constituted himself not a hero, but an anti-hero. He has become less a man of action than a symbol of subversion. Mr. Hemingway championed the underdog. In the war in Spain, he was on the losing side, but we must never say that he fought for communism, because he knew it could not win. It is Mr. Mailer who espouses lost causes, while Mr. Hemingway may have been the victim of neurotic self-assurance. Mr. Mailer is the exponent of boisterous self-doubt. He positively embraces failure and has compelled the world press to snap him in this compromising position. His marriages are solemnized like wrongs hushed up, but his divorces are reported in as much detail as a boxing match. If he ever rejoices, he must do so in a whisper, but his curses are on a coast-to-coast network. If he were to receive an award, we should never know about it. But when he is clapped into a dungeon, the police can hardly reach him through the convoy of cameramen. Since it is at his special request that the photographers are present, we must say that disgrace is part of his style. Defeat is the medium through which he fully intends to reach out and touch his audience. After the success of The Naked and the Dead, Mr. Mailer need never have got out of bed again. If he did so, it must be because he did not feel that he had yet entered the profession of being. With Why Are We in Vietnam and The Armies of the Night, he moved forward from writing novels to the more direct profession of pamphleteering. All his later work, however entitled, is really the bulkiest letter ever delivered to the president, any president. The only blemish on this mammoth gesture is the rejection in his writing of the word I. Many writers have used the fictional first person. Mr. Mailer has invented the autobiographical third. It is an ingenious device, but seems a little coy in so bold a man. Needless to say, the mere writing of pamphlets soon ceased to be enough for Mr. Mailer. He now also acts them out. In this way, style has been brought to protest. To crystallize his rebellion, he has produced, directed, and acted in a movie called Wild 90. In real life, something might go wrong, or what other people would call right. A policeman might for once be merciful to one of his victims. But in a film of his own devising, Mr. Mailer is certain of suffering in person and forever the desired injustice. He fixes eternally before our eyes the blackened image of authority against which he shines so brightly. Mr. Fred Astaire once said to Mr. Jack Lemmon, "You're at a level where you can only afford one mistake. The higher up you go, the more mistakes you're allowed. Right at the top, if you make enough of them, it's considered to be your style." He must have been thinking of Mr. Mailer. Mr. Mailer transformed social defiance into an art. But one has come after him, the latchet of whose hair shirt he is not worthy to unloose, someone who flouted the conventions and the law for no reason whatsoever than because it was his destiny. Mr. Mailer chooses defeat. Degradation is the style embraced by Monsieur Jean Genet. He committed so many crimes that finally he was condemned to life imprisonment. The sentence was never carried out, because Monsieur Jean Cocteau successfully petitioned the French government for a pardon. Thus was justice tempered with artistic snobbery, almost with idiocy. If a man's crime is theft, the only extenuating circumstance can be adduced is overwhelming need. This was never discussed. Instead, it was pointed out that Monsieur Genet was a genius. As this was another way of saying that it would have been comparatively easy for him to earn a living in a different way, this argument ought logically not to have secured his release, but rather to have aggravated his punishment. What an opportunity was waiting there for a display of official style! The judge might have said, "The court was not previously aware of the prisoner's many accomplishments. In view of these, we see fit to impose the death penalty." His pardon was granted in accordance with the erroneous but almost universally held idea that culture belongs to France, and that for a Frenchman to exhibit talent is a kind of patriotism. Monsieur Cocteau is now dead. We can never know, but only hope that he was shamelessly exploiting the chauvinism of his countrymen, in order to ameliorate the lot of a man who was, in some respects, a kindred spirit. If, on the contrary, he sincerely subscribed to the notion that there is a close connection between aesthetic and moral values, it is a great pity. This kind of confused thinking, which we also see in operation when books are exempted from censorship on the ground that they are well written, leads to words like good, moral, true, beautiful, all acquiring the same meaning. Forgiven by Monsieur Cocteau, Monsieur Genet was then canonized by Monsieur Jean-Paul Sartre, who called him the saint of existentialism. And, in a way, he is. If existentialism is the philosophy that decrees that you can exercise your free will only by swimming with the tide, but faster, then it is the creed of style, and Monsieur Genet is certainly a stylist. Fate bestowed upon him certain advantages. He was illegitimate and spent his childhood in an orphanage. From there he graduated to a reformatory. If at this point he had not believed in the importance of a lifestyle, he might have tried to throw off the burdens of his early years, to turn again and become mayor of Paris. He wisely saw that this would be to yield his unique advantage and lose momentum on his journey toward self-realization. Having started downhill, he soon broke into a run towards his chosen goal of degradation. Though his homosexuality seems 1,000 times more natural than Mr. Wilde's, part of its appeal does appear to be the opportunity it gives him to heap social opprobrium upon himself. Monsieur Sartre says that Monsieur Genet knows that he will never commit murder. If this is true, it is to be regretted. The act that would crown Monsieur Genet's life would be to kill someone, ideally Monsieur Sartre, by sexual assault. Compared with the life that Monsieur Genet has led, writing must seem a very tame occupation. But in spite of this, he has found time to write 5 plays and several books. One of these, Our Lady of the Flowers, is described by the author as a prolonged fantasy with which he whiled away the hours while he was in prison. This is explanation enough. While he could not fully live, he wrote. Another of his works is called The Thief's Journal. The book is said to be autobiographical, but the reader cannot help feeling that here also we have a large element of daydream. It seems so unlikely that the author, picking his way with whatever care, would never have met anyone of normal sexual dimensions. In Monsieur Genet's life, the fantasy, the fiction, the reality are mixed with a marvelous degree of homogenization. No one can separate the various elements in his lifestyle. He is famous because he has written books that have been widely read, and his work is widely read because the public knows that he has lived it. This situation has been made possible by the moral laxity at present fashionable. The 40s and 50s were the age of recorded suffering. In accordance with that divine law by which everything always gets worse, the 60s and 70s are the age of recorded depravity. At one time, few people read books of a documentary nature. They preferred fiction. They felt sure it would contain descriptions of goings-on that decorum and fear of the laws of libel would automatically expunge from works founded in fact. The odds are now reversed. Biographies and autobiographies contain material as salacious as can be found in any novel. In this small sense, freedom can be an aid to style, but only in the hands of men of strong immoral fiber. In laying the names of these authors yet once more before the public, I am not suggesting for a moment that anyone should read their books or attempt to imitate their prose style. Whether they were good or bad writers is neither here nor there. I am trying to show that, though for some people writing remains forever merely a making profession, for others it can be converted into the starting point for a lifestyle. The writing of books can become a very bad habit, but to write one is salutary. Everyone should keep a diary, not only of events, but also of opinions, ideas, dreams, a record of the soul. In Mr. Dolly's book there is a section called Childhood Memories. It contains some lurid, even hair-raising incidents. The reader becomes calmer when he arrives at the next chapter, which is headed True Childhood Memories. A diary is useful, not only because it could form the basis for an autobiography, but also because it helps to clarify thought, brings to light what the writer's character is like, and gives him some idea of how it will seem to others. In this way it becomes a preparation for living out in the open. The tragedy of Mr. Wilde's life is obvious. No one should move to the glare of the searchlights until he has considered all the consequences. When all possible eventualities have been envisaged, the thing to do is to embrace the worst of them. There is nothing like a prison sentence for launching style. The careers of Mr. Wildeblood and Mr. Frank Norman testify to that. Thank you for listening.